So I thought it was going to take a lot longer before I was ready to do a follow-up video on the Harry Warden setup, but nope, it's already getting some upgrades here. First and foremost, I have actually swapped out the mannequin head this is on. I had 3 of these things, and 2 of them, because they're kind of a larger head, I was having trouble fitting latex masks over them, so I ended up cutting off the back here. And that was fine, like with the remake version, it sits fine on here, but the style of the mask from the original, it just sat weird with the flat back of the head. It didn't kind of connect to the head right, it kind of sagged in weird directions. So I swapped it out with the one that I had a full head for. It's a little uglier looking because it's painted black instead of being just black plastic, but it's fine. It's not that noticeable, I don't think. And the other thing I've added here, you can see, is this flight cap. Bought this off Amazon. It was relatively inexpensive. Actually, it was pretty damn cheap if I remember right. I've weathered it pretty heavily, so you just took sandpaper. It's all scratched up and scuffed up, looking like it's been worn for years and years. It also had like a strap that you just would pull through, kind of like a belt here across the neck. I ended up replacing that with a little snap connector here just to make it easier, because I found when I was trying to wear this that it was really hard to do on my head, and it was pretty tight because this mannequin, you know, the head's much smaller than my actual head, so it's saggy here, but it's pretty tight on my own face. So it's much easier to be able to do a snap than it is to do a buckle on there. So that is the new underlayer for the mask. Okay, before I put the helmet on, it's actually really front heavy right now, so I have to just show this real quick and then we'll get everything set up to film a little better. But I did add a strip of Velcro there. There's the corresponding edge there at the front of the helmet, and that's just so that when I'm wearing it or even on display, that helmet stays nice and centered and I don't have any issues with it, you know, looking off or being goofy. All right, that's much more stable. It's weird that having just that helmet on, which doesn't feel like it weighs a lot, I think it's because of the cable and everything, and then looping the tube here in the front back around really helps set the balance on this thing. So before I go into the cooler stuff, you can see the flight cap is visible underneath all of it. I think it gives it a really cool vintage look. I didn't know it was something that was missing from this display until I added it, and now I am thrilled that it's there. It really, really helps how this thing comes together. So for the more obvious stuff on this mask, I have gone ahead and added the blood. So there's blood on the grill, on the little side piece, and between the eyes there. It seems to be about what he had in the film, so that's how that is going to sit. Around his mouthpiece here, I did end up cutting the tube, so it is the accurate way that it's supposed to be now. And I also replaced the clamp with a hose clamp. It's kind of funny because the clamp that's there by default is actually a pretty nice little metal clamp. So I don't know if it was missing on the mask that they had for production, and that's why they went with a hose clamp. I don't really see the reason to have a hose clamp there, but going for accuracy, gonna put that in there. And then for the hose, I went in with a Tamiya weathering kit and used their snow powder to weather this up. I think it's just talcum powder that the hose had to begin with, so I really could have just used talcum powder, but I had this weathering kit, and I think it's going to be a little more permanent, and then, you know, if it starts coming off the original stuff here, I'll add it back in, but it just matches up the weathering a little bit more. And then here I have the connector. Originally this was just taped together. I wanted something that looked a little more mechanical, so this is actually a rotating bit from a garden hose, like adapter kind of thing, so these would swivel. I painted it flat black. They were originally just like a coppery brass color. Not even, it was just kind of a weird like yellowy metal. And I added that in there. It is glued in place. And then the big change also to the lenses is I went ahead and added some film to the inside. There is a tint that is a 35% car window tint, like a do-it-yourself kind of kit. And then there's another layer inside that's supposed to be an anti-fog for your side mirrors on the car. So I'm hoping that will help with, you know, fogging up and all that. You can see I did not do a great job applying it. It is pretty bubbly. Initially, that was a mistake because I didn't realize how the film was going to work the first time. Long story, but I had some difficulties with getting it applied and ended up leaving a lot of bubbles. But I realized that it kind of auto weathers the lenses. It makes them look like they're dirty, and I could see out of them pretty darn well. So I actually just left it that way. If I needed to fix it in the future and wanted it nice and clear, I could put the work in and, you know, get it to be what it needs to be. But for my purposes, I thought this actually worked pretty well. I have seen people use a darker tint. I think Chuck Ryan Cosplay uses like a 5% limo tint on his. I'm afraid that I'm not going to be able to see if I go that dark. While most areas of like Spooky Empire are pretty brightly lit, places like Dragon Con, if I chose to wear it there, does have some dark areas, some rooms that just don't have a lot of light, especially at night. And even Spooky, sometimes has stuff at nighttime or you have to walk to the venue. And I just want to make sure that I'm not blind if that's the case. Having super dark lenses would be cool, but I feel more confident if it's just a slight tint and just a little harder to see my eyes. You can see the miner's eyes in the mask in the movie, so it wasn't really super necessary to tint them darker anyway, but it's just a cool effect for the costume, I think. And then back here, you can see I've added some straps to the canisters, both the breathing canister and the Kohler wheat lamp. Same snaps that I used here, just simple little snap kit on some pieces of belt. I ended up buying a few different belts from Walmart and just cut them and weathered them and chopped them how I need them to be. I don't have it handy, but the actual belt I'm going to wear with the costume, I added the opposite sides of the snap, so these things will just snap into place on the waist and be ready to go. This is a weird suit to put on in its entirety because it is a lot of like random little bits and pieces and you have to kind of do it in an order. And the other replica I've been working on lately is the Prowler, which is probably a lesser known movie even than My Bloody Valentine. It was by the director that ended up doing Friday the 13th Part 4, but it was made in 1981, the golden year of slasher films. So this was really simple to throw together. It is using just a paper towel holder from Walmart with a foam head on it to give it its initial shape. And then the first layer is this, I think you call it like a scarf. Really, it's a face covering, or you can use it as different things. You use it as a headband, a face covering. It is like a nylon spandexy tube of material that you can kind of use for versatile purposes. I found it on Amazon. It was really cheap, and I was just looking for one that had kind of a vintage, World War II-ish camo pattern on it. So that goes over the head and basically is covering the face. It is see-through when you're inside of it, so you could actually see through the eyes, and that's how the costume worked in the film. Then under this is this green hood. This is a piece I found on eBay. I think it is actually World War II like issued or whatever. It's the right era, but it's just a hood they would give to soldiers to wear. So this has like a button down here and then a drawstring so you could draw it and it crumples up around the face like in the film, and then you just tie that off. So everything on here is a bit mismatched. It's not quite as clean as the Harry Warden set, and just that it's kind of a mix of reproduction bits and one vintage bit. So this is the vintage bit, which, seeing that's the most of the costume, I like that it's, it's accurate. It was easy to find. It was really cheap, so no arguments there. And then up here is another replica piece. Is a replica helmet. It's like a standard U.S. infantry helmet, I guess. I don't know a lot about, same as I don't know about mining gear. I don't know much about military gear either. I know these straps here on the side don't really match the film. I think really I need like two like this, the longer straps, to be truly movie accurate. So I do intend to get some of this kind of green nylon and make some new straps for it that are a little more movie accurate. The helmet itself is metal. Reproduction I bought off Amazon. It was also relatively inexpensive. I did leave the liner in there so it sits properly on the head. And yeah, that's a really simple thing to throw together. I do want to get like a fake rose just to put at the bottom of it. I bought the soundtrack recently. I think it's a Waxwork Records soundtrack. It has like a copy of the note from Rosemary inside of it. I kind of want to make a copy of that and have it behind it on the wall or something. I think that would be fitting just to add a little more, because it is a very basic display, but kind of an underrated slasher. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend checking the movie out. And it was a quick and easy project to throw together to go along with another 81 slasher here.